I have some news regarding the Sasquatch body parts, and it is in regards to Japan. There's been a huge interest in Japan regarding the Sasquatch that my father and Morty Lucas shot in 1953. And I've been contacted by a Japanese businessman that wants to help put the Sasquatch back together and make sure that there's a museum, a Bigfoot museum in the United States, not in Japan. And this is the plan. The donation is very generous. It's huge. We'll be like at a building for the museum. The plan is to have either the ground floor or the basement turned into a large freezer so that the Sasquatch body parts can stay cold, yet we can still work on them and put them back together. One of the problems is like 40% of the Sasquatch has frozen debris on it. So we need to keep it cold, but we still need to be able to, get the debris off the Sasquatch. So we need to keep it cold, and that's how we're going to do it. If we have a large enough area, we can have a team working on the Sasquatch, and it won't have to thaw. So that's the plan. It's great for Bigfoot. It's great for Sasquatch. It's great for the Bigfoot community, which I'm sure that there's going to be Bigfoot researchers that are going to be extremely jealous about this turn of events, but that's just what's happening. So they are not going to be in Japan. I want to be very clear on that. The museum will be in the United States, okay? Now I need to get these back in the freezer, and I have a little bit more to talk about regarding a boat motor. So let me put these in the freezer and I'll be right back. My father and Morty Lucas shot the Bigfoot in 1953 along with a guide. And they were hunting on native property, and this boat motor was used not only to transport the Bigfoot, but it was also used to help cut the Bigfoot up. And I know it sounds crazy. The whole thing's crazy, so let me explain what happened. They're hunting in a large area, swampy area, that's cattails. Cattails create mush king. Mush king is when cattails grow up, and then each year during the winter they die, and then in the spring they grow up again, and this process happens over and over again. It creates this black like swampy soil, and that's what they were hunting in. So the way my father describes it, and I've hunted that area but never close, because the Indians, after this happened, the natives, they said that it was like bad juju to go over there. So the closest I've ever been with is like a half a mile from it. You're not supposed to go in there. It's supposed to be like sacred land. It happened. Don't go in there. It's bad juju. So they're hunting on this like island that's surrounded by water and swamp. Not water that's real deep. It's real thin, or it's real shallow. But so they're on this island, and that's where the Sasquatch came at them, and they shot the Sasquatch. In other words, if you had hip boots on, you could have walked through the water. So a Sasquatch that's real tall, no problem. You could just walk through the water. This boat motor was used to transport them to the island where they were hunting, and then to get back over by where the road is, they used the boat to get back there too. So they had to cut up the Sasquatch and transport it back that way. So there was a big problem. Even once they transported the Sasquatch back closer to the road, they still had to drag it through more mush king. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like a sort of like if you go to a wildlife management area in the United States, you'll see areas set up like this. Like it'll be water, and then there might be like islands, and that's what they were hunting in. So they had a huge problem cutting up the Sasquatch, and they actually used the boat motor to cut part of the Sasquatch. And there was problems cutting it up. They had to go get things to cut it up, and not everything worked. My father said that if you took a knife and went like this, it wouldn't even penetrate the skin. That this action, like sawing, was the only way that you could cut through the skin. But there were physiologically, there's things different about the Sasquatch. That's why I'm convinced it is alien origin. The veins, my father, you had to cut them with cable cutters. Now, the cable cutters were only so big. They weren't that big, and they had to cut the head off. So I have the head. I've told you all this. I have the frozen head. But one of the things that was really hard to cut was the esophagus, the trachea and the esophagus. And the only way that they could cut it, they tried sawing it with a knife, it didn't work, was using the boat motor. So they started the motor and held the motor and kind of lifted, my dad described it as they kind of lifted the Sasquatch up into the propeller to cut the esophagus or the trachea. So this boat motor is actually going to be part of the museum. It's going to be part of the museum. It's directly related to the Sasquatch. The gun that shot the Sasquatch, that's going to be part of the museum. It's going to be a museum, you know, that centers around Bigfoot and Sasquatch. So this motor here, this was given to me before my father passed away. This is one of the items my dad said, here, take this. And it's not anything I would ever use. It does start, though, and it's a beautiful example of like a 1949 blue ribbon is what it is. But that's what they did. It sounds crazy, right? It's like insane. I just can picture either my dad or Morty holding the motor up while it's running, trying to cut the fucking Sasquatch's neck off. The Bigfoot head. I'm getting the Bigfoot head sent up here. But first, I want to make sure that we have something in place where everything can be kept frozen. It's a real problem. So with this donation from this Japanese businessman, we'll be able to accomplish all this. We'll have a building that not only can we work on the Sasquatch but we can also create a museum on the upper floors.